back. James Harden right on target. Bang, bang, George Niang to Paul Reed from Tyrese Maxey.
Joel Embiid.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Pick Swap podcast. What a week and month it's been in the Philly sports world, and the Sixers finally get in on the fun with a win last night. I'm repping my Phils today. Obviously, it's been a great time for them entering the World Series later this week. It's me and Sean as usual. Sean, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, can't complain. Felt good for the Sixers to kind of get the monkey off their back, get one in the win column, and finally shut down, all the 0-3 overreactions that were going down. So that was good. Glad to see them get a win. They looked a lot closer to the team I think we've been hoping to see. So I think everyone needed that. And like you said, Philly sports joining in on the action.
Yeah, man. So Sixers start out the season 0-3. We haven't talked since prior to the season. We were kind of waiting to get a decent look at this team before we really spoke on it. Unfortunately, a lot of those looks have been pretty bad throughout the first three games. Granted, they did play the Boston Celtics, who are the reigning, Eastern Conference champions. Then you face the Bucks, who won a championship not too long ago. Obviously, the loss to the Spurs, I think, is where people started getting a little bit antsy.
Yeah.
But they come back with a win last night. Just overall, I mean, we're gonna hit a lot of different talking points here today. Hit up, all the things that everyone needs to talk about. We'll definitely talk about today. But just overall, what have you been seeing from this team?
Yeah, I think I've been a little bit up and down with it too. I didn't take serious. I'm not as worried about the results of the first two games for sure, because it is the Bucks and the Celtics who both have very legitimate chances of ending as the top seed in the East this year and coming out of the East going into the finals. I was concerned with the style of play. I thought the first two games specifically, they looked very poor in just what they did offensively, execution-wise, not getting defensive stops. We saw the Embiid plantar fasciitis news get released after the two losses, and kind of very strange the timeline of those events. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I still think it's a work in progress. I'm not as ready to jump in that they're back after the win last night. There's still stuff they got to clean up, but they're a better team than they've shown thus far. I'm still encouraged by this team on the season, and to me, James Harden, just how strong he's looked, is the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, man, I'm very excited about what Harden has shown so far. I think honestly, during the game last night is where I saw it kind of really start getting into motion, the way this team was playing together. Early in that second half, they really put together a lot of nice possessions. Later in the first half, early in the second half, they actually started looking like the team I thought that they would. Shot a lot of threes, really a lot. They must have put an emphasis on that, to Tobias specifically. But yeah, man, the first couple disappointing. They played the Celtics pretty tough. Defense wise, I think is where I'm most disappointed. I saw that the opponents are shooting around 70% at the rim right now against the Sixers, which is pretty brutal, especially given how much we've talked Embiid up as a great interior defender. That's pretty brutal. I can't lie. So is that something that you're really I feel like defense gelling as a defensive unit will take some time. Are you kind of reading into that right now? How pretty poorly they've looked defensively?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it falls on pretty much all the shoulders of Embiid. I think especially the interior stuff. We're seeing him just kind of sleepwalking through the motions a little bit, with this frustrating, especially I thought it was a better effort last night. He ended with 3 blocks last night, which was nice to see. So there's progress, but I think a lot of it comes down to how locked in he is. I guess looking long term, I am kind of concerned on the defensive side of the ball. That's been my biggest thing. They talked going into the year about wanting to be a top 5 defense, being a top 10 defense, one of the best defensive teams in the league. And I just don't know if I can see it with these pieces. I do think Embiid is still an extremely high caliber defender when he is locked in, which he really hasn't been that much to start this season. But looking at the wing depth and the perimeter defense on this team, I don't know if we can seriously look at ourselves and think a backcourt of James Harden and Tyrese Maxey can be a top 10 defense in the league, especially with how important perimeter defense is in the modern NBA. Harden, I mean, has been as advertised on defense. I don't think he's been glaringly bad. He's had a couple steals, but he just gets lost whenever there's any sort of off-ball movement or off-ball cutting, anything that's just not him that he follows. Maxey, he tries, does his thing, but he's just limited in what he can do. So I guess that's where my biggest concern. And Tobias, is as much as a massive credit to him for the way he's reinventing himself, he's never going to be a defensive glove. So I do think there's some serious concerns defensively. I think that's probably my biggest negative takeaway through the beginning. But I don't know. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's kind of tough. Again, like you said, a defensive backcourt of James Harden and Tyrese Maxey, like you can only go so far with that. But on the flip side of that, like you do have a great defender in PJ Tucker who's come in, and I think that he's going to do a lot. I love him. I love the way that he plays and the way that he's um, just kind of fit into this. And I think going forward, like later in the season, his role is going to become increasingly more important. But like you said, I think it's tough. Tobias honestly, it's matchups. It's a lot of matchups that I think that they lose. Like yesterday, like Tobias Harris, really his main project yesterday was Buddy Hield, and I don't get that. I don't understand why that is his role. I don't understand why that was his defensive assignment last night. Like, and maybe that's coaching. I don't know what it is. But like he just isn't he's not gonna chase a guy around the perimeter, chase him up the 3-point line, recover on a drive. Like that's just not who Tobias is. I think he suits a little bit better on a guy that's gonna attack the basket more, use his body. He's a strong, nice solid frame. So I don't know. I think it's gonna be a lot of them taking time, and there were a lot of possessions yesterday, honestly, more by the bench unit, where their defense looked incredible. Like Melton and Daniel House, Paul Reed, his minutes last night were a little bit chaotic, as to be expected, right? But the second unit, when they are playing together and flying around the floor, I loved Anthony Melton. But watching those guys run around and seeing the effort that they put in, I think sparked the other guys a little bit more, and you saw a better defensive effort in the second half. But I think it's a lot of going to be a lot of this is going to end up being matchup based, and a lot of times, unfortunately, I think that they lose some of these matchups.
Yeah, definitely. It's I mean, first off, the last night was the bench unit's best night by far. So far, they've had 34 total points in the first 3 games and 36 last night. So outscoring that in itself. That also, I think, can be credited to Embiid. I thought he was way more active, looking at passes, being more free flowing with the
Yes.
ball, getting other guys involved, which was huge with that. We saw Melton at least kind of be a little bit of the spark. We hope Niang just let it fly, which he looks
Yeah.
I think he looks especially comfortable next to Harden. I thought those two did a good job of, I mean, all Harden wants to play with is guys that are just willing to jack it, and that's who
Yeah.
Georges the miniman Niang is at this point.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we do. I'm still, I guess there's two for me. I see the kind of main issues is to circle back to like the perimeter defense. Even this bench unit, like I don't think, and Matisse Thybulle's played under 10 minutes total this far in the NBA season. So we're complaining about all this perimeter defense, and our best perimeter defender is not touching the floor. I was especially surprised by that last night because of, like, Doc went 11 deep. We saw Shake Milton get some action, which I think he should. I like that. We need more ball handling. I thought he had a nice little dish off to Embiid that I put a tweet out about that I thought was awesome. I don't know what's up with Matisse, man. Like I just don't see it on. He's very clearly not a part of the Sixers rotation or future, and I've been surprised by that.
Yeah, man. I don't like again, like you said, I don't know what's happening because you can't boost his trade value by sitting him, right? Like if the plan is to move on from him, like he's doing no good for you on the bench, really, like none at all. Same with Shake. Like, and Shake came in, had a productive couple minutes, came out, didn't see the floor again. Like he literally did like 2 or 3 good things back to back to back, never saw the court again. And like I don't know. Again, like I'm gonna give this time before I start feeling like getting really frustrated about it. Like honestly, it's been a lot of people are just like whatever. Embiid made the joke last night that like some of the fans probably wanted him traded or sent to the G League or something after the 0-3 start. Like it's funny because it's true. Like a lot of people are kind of losing their minds right now. I do think that this is something that's going to take a little bit of time. But I guess this is a good way to transition, like to kind of talk about this as a whole. Are you believing the Doc Rivers hot seat conversation that's being had around the Sixers basketball right now?
Kinda. I mean, I think the Sixers leash on him is way longer than I think a lot of people are giving credit. Like, I don't buy into like. I'm curious how dark things would have to get for them to actually pull
Yeah.
the trigger on fire. Because there's the weird balance that we've talked about it before. Like Doc was hired here before Daryl Morey, and I think as much as like there's definitely things we can nitpick, and there's definitely frustrations with Doc that I'm gonna get right back to, but like there's players that like playing for like Montrezl Harrell probably isn't here. Montrezl Harrell, who's been pretty terrible by the way, but
Yeah.
like he comes here to play with Doc Rivers, and Daryl Morey's acknowledged that pretty publicly as such. As far as Doc specifically, last night the Pacers game was by far their best effort all around. There's got to be more. There's some sort of disconnect, I think, between Rivers and Harden. I especially saw it in the Celtics and Bucks game where there's just either he's not running the sets correctly with like getting enough movement, or Doc's not calling it right, or the sets themselves are just not drawn up well enough. But there is just seems to be too much of a lack of creativity, too much just isolation being banked on, and that being the case. I think I unfortunately think that the Sixers are going to ride it out with Doc Rivers one way or another this season. There is a ton of pressure on him to produce this year, but I think that we're gonna have to see this through, just like however it shakes out.
Yeah, let me say this as somebody that like both of us have been pretty vocal, with our criticisms with Doc. Especially, I feel like I've been on the far end of this spectrum, basically the entire time. Quoted as saying Doc is the most overrated coach of all time before he was hired here. I do not think he's going anywhere this season. And I honestly, the way that I'm looking at it is there's not much benefit to moving on from him in the middle of this season. We talked about how this team is finally like had an off season together, finally starting to play together more. Doc has been, through this process. I think honestly, if they were going to move on, they would have already done it. And I think that it's better for them if they are going to move on. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm definitely not saying that. But if they are going to move on, I think that's probably something that happens, immediately following this season, especially determined by the outcome of this year. I know that might sound a little bit surprising. You look a little bit surprised by by that comment, but I think the way that it is this year is like, this is what they have. This is the team they put together. It's going to take time to gel and become a solid unit. And until that happens, it's going to be more than halfway through the year. And then what do? You can't fire Doc in March. So I think it's just the way it's going to be this year.
Yeah, I agree. How wrong are the people that say that Sam Cassell is the Rob Thompson to Doc Rivers, Joe Girardi?
I think we're as much as I love that, as much as I do, because you and I have been calling for Sam Cassell for a couple of years now, and I like him a lot, and I do hope he's the successor to this reign. But it doesn't happen all that often. Like that Rob Thompson success story is one for the books because it does not happen that often. And I think the thing is too, you have multiple head coaches on this staff, right? Like Dave Yeager. Yeah, Yeager. Yeah. Dave Yeager was there for, coached multiple teams as a head coach. And I think that if they were going to fire him mid-season, like they'd almost have to go to a former head coach, a guy that's been there before. So I don't see it happening, for better or for worse. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. I think we would have to get into dark depths that we don't want to see for it to have to be the case this year. I also think like the Phillies have changed my perspective a little bit on what I believe about like a midseason change. But like in general, it kind of goes one or two ways. It either kind of fully derails your season and it kind of is very disruptive to everything, or it kind of gives a spark. And basketball is kind of unique because. And I think Daryl specifically values like player talent way more than he does coaching.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason that he has a fairly long leash with Doc, because he believes that if I get the right mix of players, like it kind of doesn't matter who's coaching it, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think there's a mix there. And the thing that I think frustrates everyone the most about Doc, and I can be included in this, is just like the way he kind of talks about things to the media. I think his media savviness is much more earns much more criticism than his coaching. Like even after the Spurs loss, like coming out saying like we're just not ready to win yet. Like, bro, you're the coach of the team. Like it's fine for us to be able to be saying that. It's like you have a very like hand in making sure that that's not the case. So those kind of things do drive me crazy. I still like can't believe he said that, and that just kind of got flown under. But we're in it for the long haul with Doc Rivers. I agree.
Yeah, I don't think there's much changing. That's just an unreal answer to a question. Would you ask Pop that question? I'll never forget that either. And I think it's because he seems so like apathetic. Like so much of this seems to not impact his like day-to-day life so much. And it's like how? Like we're all so invested and so pissed when they lose and getting so frustrated. Yeah. Yes, this is literally your life. And it just that the apathy that comes from Doc. And it's like it's little stuff like I don't know, man, like just the demeanor on the bench, the way that this team plays at times does feel like a microcosm for who Doc is as a person. It's just like, whatever, we might win, we might not. Like that's not the way I think, and I think that's where Philadelphia fans get frustrated with him, and rightfully so. But yeah, I don't think that there's going to be a change. Just honestly, on the basis of like you really can't right now,
Yeah,
and it's his team. So I don't know though, but and I think this is something we can kind of move into as well when kind of moving into James Harden and what he's been able to do this season so far. He's looked very good, basically exactly what we've been hoping him to be. But there's times where he pounds the rock. I know it's a conversation, right? A stupid conversation at that,
right.
counting his dribbles. Who cares?
Who does
Who cares?
Who's the man
Who?
doing that?
Yeah,
He's
literally.
stopping
Who's?
tally marks every time the ball touches the floor.
Yeah, I actually had that thought last night at the game. I was like, I wonder how many times he's dribbled and who's over there on the scores table tallying his dribbles. But regardless, like the ball at times has seemed like very stagnant. The offense seems to kind of just rely on one or two guys or three guys. And you talk about Montrezl Harrell, like I'm sick of them force feeding the ball to Montrezl Harrell in the post. I don't give a shit how many points he scores. Like it's not his problem. Like you move the ball, you get a good shot. Like that's the name of the game. Obviously, with Embiid, it's a little bit different, but Harden, like a lot of this offense seems stagnant at times from the losses that they've had. Is that a Doc thing, or is that these guys trying to kind of just overcome Doc as a coach? Like, what do you think that is? It just not being able to play. Haven't played much basketball together, haven't gelled yet. Like, do you have an idea?
Yeah, it's a lot of everything. I mean, at their core, both Embiid and Harden are very isolation based in their nature of play. They're both two of the premier shot creators and guys that just can go out and get a bucket out of anyone in the NBA. So that's kind of part of it. They're both their most natural. I would say Harden more specifically than Joel, but it is both of them. But
Hmm.
I just think Harden just because he's so dribbling the rock a ton, as everyone is pointing out right now. I need to see more of. I just believe the crux of this entire Sixers offense has to be more pick and roll based with Harden and Embiid, and that doesn't mean just Harden and Embiid running a pick and roll and everyone else standing around watching. Like there's
Yeah.
branches of it that need to be built off that, like setting a back screen for whether it's Tobias cutting the basket or setting Maxey open for a corner three, those kind of things. And you just have to they've run some like more than the beginning of the season for sure, but there's just really no stopping that. And the way that there is you can build off that even with Harden and Embiid. Like if now I believe in Harden to the point where it's like if he gets a big switched on him, now that's money. Like that's what we're looking
Yeah.
for. Or if it's Embiid popping, or there's nobody that stops Embiid as a role man. I think he still think he's been very effective in it, even though it hasn't been as often or him being 100% yet. Harden to me, I think I just want to harp on is the number one takeaway for me, and I'm absolutely thrilled with the version of him that we see. He has been significantly above the expectations I had set for him because I think I was fairly optimistic on the outlook that he could be better than he was last year, but he's been pretty close to the MVP form of what we're hoping for. And I saw him last night wave off Embiid for two of those dagger threes, which I was like, wow, that's not something I expect to see at this point in the game. And so even back to the Bucks game when it was they need a bucket and it's
He was
Harden's
going
kind of
every night.
yeah, Harden's our guy. And it's they called up a play for Embiid who missed a shot at one point. And there also was a play where they kind of ran a short roll, got Embiid the look, and Embiid just passed it right back to Harden, who hit a nice little mid range. So I'm impressed with how dominant he's been, the control he's had over every second of this game. I kind of put a lot of that on his shoulders as far as the things being stagnant. So I would like that to change because he's just not an off-ball guy. He's not going to move off-ball at all. He's phenomenal with the ball in his hand. He's the point guard. I expect him to be dribbling a ton, but there is kind of a more of a mix and more of a free flow that I think needs to be worked in.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there with that because watching last night, obviously the other games as well, but I think really last night at times where he was able to move the ball and the team kind of decided, they all said afterwards the emphasis was to make sure everyone touches the ball. And I think that he's there with that. Like, I don't think it's a problem for James Harden to kind of buy into that. But yeah, man, he's been incredible. The conversations that we've had over this summer and into this season where, we're hoping he's getting back to that 20, 22, 23 point per game. He's up at 27, 28. Like he's shooting the mid range a lot.
Unreal.
All the time, and he's making it at an unreal clip. He's handling the ball. He's, flying past people at a great rate. Something we he's done it more this season than we saw all in the 25 games that we had him last year. He's been able to, like you said, big switches on. The pick and roll is deadly. They need to exploit it more often. It seems like it's one of those things where it's almost like they're trying to make the game harder for themselves at times. They're like, yeah, the pick and roll is going to work too much, so let's do something else. Like you said, I think running other sets off of that, getting Tyrese Maxey more involved, and just like it's so frustrating. It pisses me off so much watching what they do to him sometimes. The kid just stands. The kid just stands sometimes. And it's like, I know he's a great shooter. He's become a very good 3-point shooter. Catching 35, 36, 37 feet from the basket and doing the hop step in and shooting just isn't going to do it for me. He's way more effective doing everything else and having that 3-point shot as the back. The second hand version of his offense should be that jumper. Aside from that, man, like going back to Harden, like him as a passer, I don't mean to do this, and I'm not even going to really bother too much, but like him, what he does on a nightly basis, just casually, is better than anything that we've had ever before. Like he is sleepwalking through these games, controlling it, dominating on every single level, and it's just casual. It's what he does, and it's just so nice to see a guy that confident, able to do what he does. It's business as usual for him, and it's really nice to have a version of him back like this. Because honestly, it was our hope. It was what we're really like, this is best case scenario. I think we're seeing that version of Harden. And as they gel, as they move the ball a little bit better, I think he's going to just be fantastic for them this season. He's an all-star. He's very clearly an all-star. And, I think that we were like, he might be a fringe all-star this year. He's very clearly playing like an all-star right now.
Yeah, I like how you avoided Mr. Fallout's name right there too. So I respect that. But yeah, I can't say enough about James Harden right now. It really, the mid range specifically is like, that's something that's literally been chopped out of his game for years, like dating back to the what was it? It was the Bucks game. The Bucks game was the game he set the record in his career for most mid range shots made in a game. Like that's something like we kind of talked about it, like he needs to do this to add to his game. It'll add, and he did it. Like he's more than done it. He looks for it now. Like he creates that way, and it's perfect because he's avoiding that. Last year, he used to get trapped when he got to the basket, where he kind of was just seeking out contact, chucking it up, and like hoping for a foul. You're kind of avoiding that and taking a very efficient shot when you do it this way. And he looks comfortable taking it. He can get to his spots pretty much whenever. And it's just like, I've never seen a player just add a layer like that so flawlessly, so confidently. Like that looks like one of his shots now, which is awesome to see. He's now truly a 3-level scorer, which really he hasn't been throughout his entire career.
Yeah, and like on top of that, he's doing it in different ways. Like he bullied, I forget who it was, Nemhard, backed him down, put a shoulder in, turn around, fade away from the mid range. It's like he wasn't even shooting wide open mid range off of one dribble last year. He's now getting it to his left hand. He's going to the right hand. He's stepping back in the mid range, and then on top of that, he is getting to the basket at a good rate, shooting the 3 ball, pretty well, dropping off Benedict Mathurin, maybe stepped on his foot, who knows, hit you with the boom afterwards. It's just great to see that he's able to kind of become the player that we, not necessarily reinvent himself, but kind of get back to what he's always been in that sense. And I think, him quote unquote carrying right now is a good sign. But I think the usage rate could go down a bit, like you said, and just kind of sprinkle it around to everybody else. I do want to move into Joel Embiid a bit here. I know a lot of people have been concerned about this. Like, to preface, October is his worst month of the season every single year. He said he didn't play any basketball over the summer. He might not have been kidding.
Yeah.
He might have been serious. He looks slow a little bit right now. He doesn't look like he's in great shape currently. Defensively, like we said, it's been a little bit concerning. Are you buying into this stuff at all? Or are you just kind of chopping it up to it's Embiid in October, these games don't matter, he's just kind of ramping it up?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I mean, I'll say through the first 2 games, which is before the Sixers, I guess, dropped a little PR thing about the plantar fasciitis and said, like, what he's battling, which very strange that wasn't kind of talked about on media day or in the preseason. I also don't get like playing these guys, like playing Embiid specifically, like 40 minutes a game, as he is not in shape and working back from this, if that's the case. And I do believe him. Like, I don't think they're lying about this. That's definitely something that like is very bothersome and is concerning, like in the long term. Like, if like assuming this is truly what he was battling this offseason, he absolutely should be locked to his couch and like because that's something that does linger throughout a season,
Yeah.
and I would much rather him be a little out of shape now rather than be battling this throughout the course of the season. So fine with that. I went back and watched like the media day interviews again, and he definitely was dead serious about like not leaving the couch. And it's funny because it got brought up on like two occasions. Like first off, the first question was like what did you add to this game this summer, stuff like that, and he's just kind of like like I pretty much just laid in bed all summer. And then they like specifically asked like, but no, like seriously, like what'd you work on? He's like, I was chilling on the couch, like, and everyone just kind of like shook it off, and
Yeah.
also assuming because he also did get hand surgery on both hands, so like that's kind of
Yeah.
what that was taken to mean was to be working on that. And there, like I've watched enough of the shout out Drew Hanlon, the unseen hours of he was in the gym with Drew Hanlon working on his shot creation, working out with Tatum, Kevin Durant, guys like that. So he didn't do nothing, but I guess he did kind of. This was more serious than anyone let on. It didn't look through the first two games like to me his like normal kind of out of shapeness. Like it more felt
Yeah.
like a step behind or just not completely with it, which that was unusual to see. He's gotten progressively better, and I think it's only going to get progressively better as the season goes on. When like once again we have this version of James Harden, when we get Joel Embiid up to par and on the same page with that, that's when this team's going to fully click. So to me, it's a reason to be optimistic more than anything.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's Embiid. We've seen him go through these things before and kind of lollygag through certain portion of the season, and like we can't have it both ways. Like Sixers fans, all these years have been like, regular season doesn't matter, only matters when you get to playoffs, only matters when you can win series. Okay, then games 1 through 60 don't matter. Like then you got to be serious and about it. And I think that they're taking it a bit serious. Like you said, it's a little bit of a contradictory thing when you play him 38 minutes a night and he's just kind of ramping back up. It's a little bit confusing, but that's Doc Rivers for you, especially when you have two competent backups. All I'll say. But yeah, I think Joel is going to be fine. Last night he got to some spots. He did his thing, especially like second quarter, third quarter. I think he did. Showed a little bit of the version of himself. Got it. He's not attacking the rim very often. It's pretty rare for him to like attack off the dribble right now. Again, that's okay. That's how he has gotten hurt in the past. So like him avoiding that isn't the worst thing in the world. Settling for jumpers and kind of like clogging up certain areas is I think the part that some people are frustrated with. But it's like it is the way it is. I think I've seen them kind of like again, I do think it's a lot of them just kind of gelling together and figuring it out with all of them. Obviously, having a guy like Tucker to facilitate a little bit more and play that game. I think they just have so many opportunities to run pick and rolls and run certain sets. Like it could be Harden and Embiid, Harden and Tucker, Harden and Harris. It could be Maxey and Tucker, Maxey and Embiid, Maxey and Harris. Like it could be all these different versions. They just don't do it enough. And I think that going forward, that should be the emphasis, and finding ways to kind of create off that is what they'll do. And I think Embiid will eat up when it comes time, but I'm not, really all that concerned as it stands right now.
Yeah, I think he's kind of embraced the mindset of like being ready for playoffs too. Like he
Yeah.
looks like I think he means what he says in the MVP kind of talks too, where he says like I'm over going for the award. I think he sees the window was last year, and that like he just wants to be fully focused on the postseason when he gets here. And if that means making sure he's completely healthy, which is what the Sixers need for them to have the best chance, like he'll coast a little bit, and that's kind of what he's doing.
Whatever.
I think that's kind of how he took the offseason too, because like the fact of the matter is he hasn't been fully healthy in a playoffs throughout his entire tenure with the Sixers. And I don't blame him fully for this. Some of them are such like freak things, getting hit in the face by Pascal Siakam, taking a shoulder to the face from Markelle Fultz, stuff like that. It's a very out of his control.
Yeah.
And like, I feel bad for him, but the only playoffs that he's been truly healthy for was the bubble against the Celtics when they got swept and Ben Simmons had his back injury and there was nobody there for him to have help. So I think that's really the focus for him. The Sixers have to get some sort of load management game plan as the season progresses. And we're 1-3 right now, so it's not the time to be talking about that. But like Doc Rivers is going to play these guys to death. I was happy PJ Tucker like sat out the second half because it's insane the amount we're putting him through as like a 37-year-old playing 30 minutes, 40 minutes on a nightly basis. He was averaging 37 minutes a game going into last night. And we're having kind of the reverse like argument because last year I felt like we were sitting here slamming like why are we going so deep in our bench? Why are we doing this? It's like now I'm like, dude, it is October and we're going 9 deep and playing our starters 35, 40 minutes. It's like, what are we doing here? So that hasn't made sense to me either. I think Doc is kind of shifting and relaxing after the first 2 games. I think everybody's a little antsy out of the gates, but we got to use these bench guys, got to spread everything out, make sure everyone's okay.
Yeah, I mean, the depth was, such an emphasis this offseason. It's time to use it. So,
Right.
and that's something we're going to end up talking about a good amount throughout the season, I'm sure, what this bench looks like and what they've been able to do. I know I touched on Tyrese a little bit a minute ago. It seems like he's looking a little bit out of place. Not that he doesn't fit. That's not what I'm saying at all. It seems like he's, not finding his footing quite yet, which I think is a little bit disappointing to Sixers fans after we've seen him have so much success early on. What is it about what you've seen from him this season so far? Like what is looking good? What's looking bad? What would you like to see him do more?
To start out with looking good, I'll just say transition. I think they've done he's their weapon in transition, is throwing the ball ahead, letting him run full steam. That's kind of the only time I've seen him really shine. I think it's just like finding his fit. Like kind of what we talked about, how Embiid and Harden are so ball dominant. There's just
Mhm.
not that much like slices of the pie left over for other guys, and Maxey kind of gets the short end of the stick. I like that Doc played around with like him playing with the 4 bench guys yesterday. That's something I would like to continue to focus, because I think he needs time to just have his moment, let it be his show to run. Uh, it's hard. Like it really is hard finding him balance. I feel like we're wasting him a lot. I also think like defenses are way more on notice. Like he's no longer the surprise guy. He's a guy like is paid attention to in scouting reports. Doc Rivers has kind of countered that by, when you watch him in the offense, he does a lot of kind of like free flowing, just like running through the mix of things to kind of draw defense, that kind of thing. But like you're still kind of wasting him if that's like what you're doing with him. So I still need to see more. There's been some brief moments of I've been excited about, specifically in the Spurs game. I saw it where there was some 2-man action with Maxey and Embiid. That I think needs to be higher up on the just order of the playbook as well, because the way he can get downhill, the first step and pace that he has, it's just something that not a lot of people can match. And just like that, even the threat of that makes teams vulnerable for Embiid pick and pop, stuff like that. I think there needs to be more 2-man action with Maxey and Embiid. There's just a lot. Just getting him more involved, finding his role in the offense, I would say, is just the biggest thing.
Yeah, and again, I like we've kind of been talking. It's a little bit of that. Once the season gets going and they're finding a rhythm, I think we'll see that a lot. In my head, what I see from Maxey, or what I want to see, when JJ Redick and Embiid used to play together, obviously, I'm not comparing Tyrese Maxey to very, very, very
Different.
opposite side of the spectrum type of players. But when you think about what they bring, what they add, that 2-man with Embiid, I think Maxey could be so effective in that sense. Just dribble handoffs, coming off those screens. You don't even have to give it to him, but just him running off that shoulder, running off Embiid's hip, I guess is probably a better way to put it. But him getting around him, getting downhill, if you hand it off to him, it's a 2-on-1 towards the rim, right? If his defender goes under and you hand it off, he steps back towards his left side and goes up for the jumper because he shoots 40% from three. There's a lot of different options there. He's becoming a better passer. He made some nice passes yesterday. And I think just letting him have certain points in the game, certain times during the game, certain sets that he knows it's his time to go, will start to set him in the right motion of finding the balance of scoring and spacing and passing and doing all these things. I think it just kind of seems like they don't really have a set plan right now. They're kind of just like free flowing. Again, it's going to take time. I'm not worried about Tyrese Maxey. It just would be nice to see him get going. Fourth quarter, he had a couple buckets yesterday. But it's that time when he turns it on and he's ready to go. There's not a lot of guys that stop him. He gets caught in that corner a lot. Baseline corner, floater, fadeaway jumpers. Nothing that's really high percentage. Nothing not getting to the rim. But again, that's a lot of the defense actually knowing who Tyrese Maxey is and being like, we can't let him get to the basket right now because he's not going to miss. Still not getting a lot of respect from the officials right now. I noticed that yesterday, but like, again, I think he's going to figure it out. It's going to take some time. And I think, Harden as well is going to make sure that he gets his. That's going to be, I think, an emphasis on what Harden does later in the season as well.
Yeah, and a lingering concern of mine, but something that I think will be like continually just focused and somehow found ways to like work it in throughout the season. But there has to be like, when Harden, Maxey, and Embiid are all on the court, that has to be the Sixers like best lineup. That has to be the most dangerous offensively, specifically. I feel like there's too much of like, I don't know if they're afraid to step on each other's toes or if the flow is just not quite there, but it feels like it's too much like each guy has had their individual moments to shine and are at their best when they're specifically the focal point, and not as
Yeah.
much of like each of them kind of building upon each other and becoming more dangerous. And I think it's something like the more that times are played, the more that like the more things build, it'll improve. But that's something for me that I'm going to be paying attention to as the season progresses, because that just has to be like the most dangerous trio on the whole roster. And to this date, I don't know if we can say that's been the case.
Yeah, which is interesting. Because it is by far the most talented unit that they have. But
Yeah.
again, and honest, and they have played together, so like it's not
Yeah.
like they're just coming together right now. But again, I think that's gonna be something that comes as the season goes. Um, Maxey's just gonna he kind of went through this last year, right? Like a little bit. We talked at times him with Embiid on the court, and then him with Embiid and Harden. Like he gets a little bit passive. I think what we saw later in the game yesterday, where the ball was kind of flying around, popping to different guys, everyone touching the ball on each possession. Like I think once that starts happening, and these guys are kind of finding their rhythm and their spots within the offense, that'll start to flow a little bit. One guy that I was really pleased with yesterday, and a guy that has, as Doc quoted as saying, like, given himself to the team and really taken his, a step towards the direction that we really have been like kind of hoping for, is Tobias Harris, finding himself shooting 10 3-pointers last night. He put up 18 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 7 of 14 shooting, 4 of 10 from 3, a steal and a block. I like what I've seen from Tobias. Yesterday was, the most willing I've ever seen him as a shooter. What are you taking away from Tobias right now?
Yeah, just a ton of respect for him. A ton of just, it's not easy to do the things he's doing, and it's swallowing his pride, playing in a way he's really not comfortable playing, improving defensively, doing the little things. He's just like buying into the team, what they need, and it's really not a role cut out for him. So I'm super excited that that has been the case. He hasn't shot 10 3-pointers in games since the 2018-19 season. Like that's just great to see that he's willing. And earlier on, even during the Sixers losses, like there's been stretches where he's been the bright spot and the Sixers losing. In the opening game, specifically against the Celtics, he hit a couple even tough 3-pointers and tough shots like that. So I've been thrilled with what I've seen. I am very impressed and cannot imagine he's embraced things in the way that he has. So shout out to Tobias and major credit.
Yeah, man. I was really happy to see last night. He was everywhere on the court. And he was, defensively, he looked good. Like I said, the matchup with Buddy Hield just isn't something that I think is really cut out for him as a defender. Like, I just don't like that matchup. It's just not, but there's going to be times where he's, playing against a guy that he does match up well with. He's a willing and energetic defender, a good leader. And then on the offensive side of the ball, he's touching it way less, but he's scoring it just as much. Like that is peak exactly what we, have been asking for from Tobias, becoming a very willing and like he's seeking out 3-pointers. He's seeking out, times and spots. And when you look at the pick and roll, and I think that's why it becomes so lethal and why we are so dumbfounded that they don't do it as often as they should. Like Tobias becoming, a good, solid, like you're happy to see Tobias put the ball up in the air to shoot the threes in the corner. Like spacing of Tucker and Harris in the corners, a pick and roll of Embiid and Harden, and then Tyrese Maxey as a threat on the outside as well. Like I just think him being him as in Tobias becoming such a good shooter out there, willing shooter. He's been getting downhill on like one dribble, 2 dribbles only, getting to the rim. Fast break Tobias has always been pretty good. So I'm very happy to see what he's been able to do. And just a consummate pro, man. Just a guy that you like having on your team and has been fantastic thus far.
Yeah, definitely. A ton of respect to that. I'm very impressed, and it does think like I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Daryl Morey at come deadline time looks to package him, try and get like a true wing guy, a guy that's more natural in that. But even if that is the case, and I'm very impressed with the things he's doing to just make himself accessible. So shout out to Tobias. Looking ahead a little bit at the Sixers schedule, heading up to Toronto for back-to-backs against the Raptors. Difficult there. They then return to play the Bulls. What are your thoughts on these 3 games, James?
Yeah, man. I don't know. The schedule's so weird. I was looking at it today. They go like they play back to backs against a bunch of teams coming up here. They have 2 against the Raptors, and then the Wizards, and then the Hawks. Like very strange, but I don't know, man. I'd love to see them win in Toronto. These are all good tests, right? Like I think seeing all these different teams, good looks. The Eastern Conference is deep. They're going to see a lot of good teams. The Wizards are even looking not bad right now. So I don't know, man. I think like again, when we talk about this season, I think the wins and losses are going to be whatever they are. They're going to end up with however many wins they end up with. It's really just going to be what I see from the offense and the defense are kind of putting them together and seeing what this is as a team. So with playing in Toronto, love to see them win. Really not a big fan of the Raptors anymore following last postseason. But seeing what they're able to do defensively against these like lengthy, quirky wings that they have, and then, the pick and roll and what they do on offense against these like weird defenders. I think it's a good thing that they play these teams. And I think, hopefully they come out of these next couple with a few wins at least.
Yeah, I don't think they'll take both against Toronto. I think Toronto is too scrappy, too good, too tough to match up for what the Sixers do. Hopefully they squeeze one, and I don't know. I'm a little nervous. The panic buttons are people are gonna be nervous be pressing them. I don't think the Sixers are a polished unit by any means yet, so they need to keep building. For everybody, I feel like it's way more about how the Sixers play than the other team, and that's what we've seen so far. They haven't been good enough. The win against the Pacers was a very big step in the right direction and a necessary one, but they still have a lot to clean up.
Yeah, and again, it's going to take time. This is only game 5 of this season, so coming up on game 5s and 6 in Toronto. So I don't think it's going to be. I'm trying not to get too emotional when I watch it. We've all been there watching these games. It's so early, man. It's October. We're not even out of baseball season yet. So it's one of those things where we can kind of just watch, take away what you take away. Don't worry too much about the outcome. I sound like Doc Rivers right now, don't I?
A little bit.
I do sound like Doc Rivers right now. I mean, obviously, I'd love to see them win, but I'm not putting too much stake in that right now. But love to see Embiid just look a little bit better. Love to see Maxey get a little bit more, kind of the things we've talked about today.
Yeah, and you also are not the head coach of the team, so I feel like it's a
That's
little more
true.
acceptable to be hearing from you. But
Yeah, that's true.
yeah. But yeah, we'll see how things play out in the next couple games. Appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Hopefully they can steal a couple against the Raptors and everywhere else moving forward. Go Phillies. Until then, thank you guys. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have not already. And we'll be back with you next time.